There's been a great win over the last couple of days in the war to protect free speech. Over in the USA, one of their congressmen, Representative Darrell Issa, out of California, Republican out of California, one of the probably very few, has put forward a bill titled No Censors on Our Shore. And that bill has just unanimously passed the Judiciary Committee, and it's now going to the floor of the Congress, and then it will be hopefully be passed by the Senate and then signed off into law by President Trump. Now, this is a very important law that actually could see bureaucrats in Australia and even Australian politicians banned from entering the USA because they are deemed as censors and are not welcome in America. That's the provisions of this bill. So let's just quickly have a look at the exact wording of the bill here. It's labelled HR 9605. It's described as to provide that any foreign government official who engages in censorship of American speech is inadmissible and deportable. So that means that they won't get a visa if they want to go on their skiing holiday over to the US, or go and visit relatives or friends, or a trip through the US, or even to transit through the USA. They won't be able to. And if they're there hiding out in embassies and things, someone like Kevin Rudd, they could be deportable if they're seen to engage in the censorship of Americans. Now, the wording of the bill, and it's the same wording for both deportations and denying people visas to the US. It's an amendment to the US Migration and Nationality Act, and the provisions are, it says here, any alien who, while serving as a foreign government official, was responsible for or directly carried out at any time any act against a US citizen located in the United States, that if committed by a United States government official in the United States, would violate the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, is inadmissible. Now, important point to make out from the very start, that while the US has laws to protect free speech, in Australia we don't have those protections. As our friend, the ESafety Commissar, reminded everyone once while she was visiting Davos, that the First Amendment doesn't apply in Australia, and she can introduce laws to censor the free speech of Australians, laws that would never see the light of day in the US because they'd be prohibited under the Constitution.
Hi, I'm Julian McGrant, Australia's ESafety Commissioner.
I attended the World Economic Global Summit as the eSafety Commissioner.
Do you believe that the First Amendment has too high a bar for the online era?
The First Amendment does not apply in Australia. The First Amendment does not apply in Australia.
I know, but you're an American, so I thought in general, as a standard for freedom of expression, do you think that's too high of one?
No, I don't apply that. I apply the laws of the Australian government.
Are you setting yourself up as an arbiter of what should and should not be seen online?
I'm sorry, as myself as an Australian, find it galling that American citizens can come to Australia and think she can decide what we can and cannot hear, or what we can and cannot say, in a way that she couldn't do it to American citizens in America.
Well, we have a range of graduated powers. There could be civil proceedings, and we could take them to court, or we could fine them. Of course, the quantum of the fine would depend on the gravity of the noncompliance, but we can use graduated tools like link deletion notices. So if they fail to remove the content, then we can go to the search engines such as Google or Bing to really minimize the amount of content the Australians can see.
This is the very reason why in this country that we need to change our constitution, amend our constitution, and insert in it a provision that protects free speech in the same manner that it does in the US Constitution. Why should Australian citizens not have their free speech protected in a manner that American citizens do? What, are we some type of second-rate people down here that don't deserve our free speech protected? Because that seems to be what ESafety Karen thinks, as she wants to tell us what we can and cannot hear.
So if they fail to remove the content, then we can go to the search engines such as Google or Bing to really minimize the amount of content the Australians can see.
Now, going through some of the commentary and the reason for this bill, on the Twitter page of the House Judiciary, the GOP party, the Republicans, it says here, in April 2024, the committee uncovered how Brazilian Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes, I think it's pronounced, ordered multiple American companies, including X, to suspend or remove over 150 social media accounts, including the accounts of US residents and journalists, or face massive fines. Now it finishes off here. They ask the question, if a Brazilian judge can order American companies to censor the speech of US residents, American free speech is in jeopardy. Now, as well as that example of the American judge, they could have very well used the example of Australia's ESafety Commissioner, where last year she attempted to censor the free speech of Americans. She attempted to censor the internet on a global scale. Now, luckily, one of the federal courts here, one of the Supreme Courts, kicked that application out and found in favour of Musk. But she went to court saying that she believed that she had the power to force X Corporation and Elon Musk to censor a post that was made in America and held on an American server, that she argued she had the power to censor that globally and censor the free speech of Americans. In fact, she's arguing as an American citizen that she has the power to violate the Constitution of the US, to suspend the free speech rights of Americans because she's over here in Australia. I'll tell you what, no wonder the Americans are passing this law. Now, of course, there is the question, has the ESafety Commissioner actually renounced her American passport and therefore would be considered an alien under this act, or does she retain American citizenship and therefore this act may not apply to her? Well, let's go through the broad readings of the act, because it refers to any foreign government official who is responsible for or directly carried out at any time any act against a US citizen located in the United States. So that could imply to most of the senior bureaucrats at the ESafety Commission. It could apply to, I would say, the Australian Media and Communications Authority. I'd be looking at them all being banned from travelling to the USA. And I'd even suggest it could apply to politicians, many of the Labor and Liberal Party politicians that have passed these laws that will give power to the ESafety Commissioner to censor the free speech of Americans. So it'd be very interesting to see what happens with this legislation. So this is why at the Libertarian Party we are taking to this next election a policy of amending Australia's constitution to insert in it an equivalent provision to protect the free speech of Australians like the free speech of Americans are protected under the American Constitution. Why should Americans enjoy greater protections to their free speech when Australians don't have that same right? In today's global marketplace, surely we Australians deserve the same rights as Americans when it comes to protection of free speech. And as for our friend, the ESafety Commissar, Michael Schellenberg has had a few words to point out what a dangerous zealot this woman is.
It's simply not the right of any nation to decide what should be on the internet around the world. No president, prime minister, or judge, said Elon Musk, has authority over all the earth. He's right. Now look, it's true that violent content online can be very disturbing, and I personally think platforms should put warning labels on them and find some way to prevent minors from seeing them. I also think there's some real privacy concerns that should be addressed, but that does not justify the Australian government censoring the entire global internet of content it does not like. And violence is not the only thing that the Australian government has told X to remove. It's also targeted political speech. What's more, there's something really suspicious about what Australia demands right now. Australia is asking for the same thing that Brazil wanted, the power to censor the whole internet. Many of us, myself included, have long suspected that government censors around the world, from Ireland, Scotland, the European Union, would attempt to censor the whole of the internet, not just in their own countries. And they would do so by using the excuse that people can get around national firewalls with virtual private networks known as VPNs. Well, that turned out to be more true than I had thought or had hoped. Public has now learned that there's a formal government censorship network called the Global Online Safety Regulators Network, which Australia's top internet censor, Julie Inman Grant, who's an American, described at, you guessed it, the World Economic Forum. The group includes censors from Australia, France, Ireland, South Africa, Korea, the UK, and Fiji. But before getting into all that, it's first important to understand just how powerful this Australian censor is. Here's Julie Inman Grant boasting of her extraordinary censorship powers.
Yes, we do regulate the platforms, and we have a big stick that we can use when we want to. They're going to be regulated, and they're going to be regulated in ways that they don't want to be regulated. So, we also have some pretty significant ISP blocking powers. We just had some new powers given to us.
In a different video, Inman Grant says,
in addition to be able to compel that takedown, to be able to fine perpetrators as a deterrent effect, and fine content hosts that don't take down this content.
She goes on to say that she is already working with Ireland, the UK, France, and other governments around the world.
We know we're going to go much further when we work together with other like-minded independent statutory authorities around the globe. With the UK, with Ireland, and with Fiji, in November 2022, we launched the Global Online Safety Regulators Network. That has now grown to 7 independent regulators, including France, South Korea, and South Africa, and a number of countries are.
Global censorship body gives governments extraordinary powers to invade privacy, not just censor. Listen to this.
What this legislation will give us the ability to do is to compel basic device information and account information. And more and more social media companies are starting to collect phone numbers and email addresses so that our investigators can at least find a place to issue a notice or a takedown notice or an infringement notice of some sort.
And how she has fallen already at trying to censor free speech. She is on the public record of implying or recommending that the President of the United States, President Trump, should have been censored from social media platforms.
During his presidency, Donald Trump not only savagely abused foes online with impunity, but was identified as a major superspreader of mis and disinformation. However, his online audience was so sizable and his content went so viral that none of the major platforms suspended him for repeated policy violations, making excuses for vaguely worded exceptions for public figures.
She also implied that RFK Jr., now in charge of health in the USA, should have been censored from platforms as a misinformation spreader.
A 2021 analysis of 120,000 posts and tweets on Facebook and Twitter found that there was just a small collection of only 12 individuals and their organizations responsible for the vast majority of anti-vax COVID misinformation circulating on the global internet during the lockdown. Whilst Donald Trump could not claim that dubious distinction of being named one of the disinformation dozen, another U.S. presidential candidate, Robert Kennedy Jr., is amongst them.
When we know that during COVID, the true misinformation spreaders were people like Klaus Schwab and President Biden, and of course, none other than Anthony Fauci himself, that were the main culprits spreading misinformation. Not RFK Jr. He was the only one telling the truth, and everything that he said has been proven correct when it came to COVID. And yet the ESafety Commissioner wanted him censored. Well, I'll tell you what. God bless the United States of America if they bring this law in and they pass it. And God bless that Representative Daryl Issa for bringing this bill before the House, and congratulations on getting it through the Judiciary Committee already. This will be a very important blow to protect free speech and stop these zealots like the ESafety Commissioner that think they can censor the internet on a global basis. It will stop them in their tracks. This will be a big win for free speech if this legislation gets through in the USA. And who knows, it might smarten some of them up down there at the ESafety Commission if they realise that they're going to be banned from travelling to the United States of America.